Hi guys, today I will share with you my analysis of 8-player Euroleague draft that we did with friends a few days ago for the upcoming Euroleague season of 2023-2024. We have used an online randomizer to assign draft pick order for everyone, and then we did snake draft to draft one player by one player, taking turns in snake draft order. I have named the teams each by a different color to simplify things. Since we are playing on the official Euroleague Fantasy platform, the position of each player, guards, forward, centers, is defined on their fantasy platform and it shares the same position as in their classic version of fantasy. So you can check all the draftable players and their positions in their webpage. So for those who don't know how snake draft works, each team has one pick per round and the picks go in this order from 1 to 8 and from 8 back to 1 and so on. And after a round is over, the following round is in reverse. So one round is from 1 to 8 and the other round is from 8 to 1 and so on. It depends on the fantasy platform you are using to draft, but in the official Euroleague Fantasy, you need to build 13 player draft team, which has exactly 3 center position players, 5 forwards and 5 guards. I will announce a giveaway at the end of the video, so stay tuned. But for now, let's go through the draft to see which players and in which order were drafted. Let's go. I started the draft and I went with Tavares. Tavares is a great choice for first pick as it had 18 PIR, which is player index rating, also known as efficiency rating, and that is used to count the fantasy points each player brings each game week. So last season Tavares had 18 efficiency and that was without a top passer on the team. And now with Campazzo on the roster, the numbers will be even higher. Team Pink chose Wade Baldwin as a second pick. It's a great pick and worth to be anywhere in top 4, I believe, this upcoming season. Team Gray went with Mirotic. I believe Mirotic should be drafted a bit lower as point guard position seems to be limited in Milan. It might be harder for Mirotic to reach his usual numbers if it's harder for him to get the ball. Tim Brown picked Will Clyburn as their first pick and fourth pick overall. Clyburn had an injury with a knee at the end in the last season in Turkish League and seemed to miss most of the preparation games. Hence, my only concern would be an injury that could stop him. Otherwise, Clyburn should be in top 5 PIR average at the end of the season. Let's go to the remaining 4 teams. And Team Yellow picked Lorenzo Brown as their first pick. And I would draft Lorenzo a bit later in the draft, in second round, maybe like 10th or 11th pick, because I expect for him to have around 15, 16 PIR. But otherwise, it should still have around those numbers. Team Green picked Matthias Lesort, and really, Mr. Green got really lucky to get Lesort at 6th pick, as Lesort is looking great in the preseason games and shouldn't have less than 18 PAR average. So I would pick Lesort in top 3. Team Blue chose Facundo Campazzo, and that's a great pick. Campazzo is great at collecting PAR, hence he should have at least 16 PAR average. Team Red went with Mike James. The thing about Mike James is that there's too many guards in Monaco, in my opinion, with Kemba Walker incoming. Also, knowing James having less playing time might affect his mood, and from there it might go even more downwards. He was already suspended for a few games last season, and hence I would not risk it and pick. I would pick him only around 25th pick if it would still be available. Probably it won't because people go crazy for Mike James, but personally I'm out. Then draft pick order changes back and we go into the second round. Team Red starts second round with 9th pick overall, which is Nikola Milutinov in Olympiacos. And Milutinov should have great stats, so might even be worth to draft him earlier. I would consider drafting him around 7th pick, but yeah, good for Team Red if they were able to get him at 9th pick. For 10th pick, Team Blue chose Kostas Lukas. With the full roster as Panathinaikos it's hard to believe that Slukas will average more than 15 PAR, which he did last season. But yeah, 15 PAR should be there. But at this point, there were still better options available to draft, in my opinion. So I would draft Slukas for this projection of 15 PAR. I would draft him at around 14th pick, personally. Team Green chose Willy Hernan Gomez. And in competition with Jan Vesely that we have in center position in Barcelona, I don't expect crazy numbers from Willy, to be honest. I project around 13 PAR. Hence, in my opinion, he was drafted way too early. I would draft him around 25th pick. Team Yellow chose Kevin Punter as 12th pick. And Punter is the main guy in Partizan and is worth to be drafted earlier, actually. So, as he might have a 16 PAR average. He was drafted 12th. I would consider drafting him a bit earlier as around 10th pick, if you have the chance. Let's go back to the first 4 teams that we take over the draft now. Team Brown picked Zach Lidey as their 13 overall pick. And Lidey is a great player from stat perspective also, but there were still more players available with higher projected PAR that could have been picked. So more better players. And I would pick Zach Lidey around 18th pick. Personally, I think it was drafted a bit too early. As I expect around 14.5 PAR for the next season for Lidey. Team Grey picked Jonathan Motley. And Motley will not have more minutes compared to last season due to strong addition of Papagiannis in the center position, and hence it is hard to believe that he will generate more than 14 PAR, or at least more than 14.5, and therefore he can be drafted a bit lower, around the 20th pick in my opinion. Team pick chose Darius Thompson, and I was really hoping it will go down to me, so it was only one player before me that took him. As I really believe in Darius Thompson, when he can produce same numbers as he had last season, he can produce in FS as well, as he had in Baskonia last season. So really lucky guy, Mr. Pink, that Darius Thompson falls so low to 15 pick. I foresee another great season for Thompson with above 17 PIR, and I would draft him in first round for sure. When it came to me, there was already a lot of great players were taken. But I took Janan Musa. Musa will only improve in numbers with Campazzo around, and it should be drafted in first round, in my opinion, maybe around 6th pick, 7th pick. So I was really happy to get him at 16th pick. And for 17th pick, I took Keenan Evans from Žalgiris. Keenan Evans is picking up the ball game after an Achilles injury, and with Brezdeikis out, if Evans is able to go back to the same shape as last season, it should be at least 15 PAR average per game, if not more. Team Pink chose Shane Larkin as 18th pick. And in my eyes, Shane Larkin has become an injury prone-ish. Not injury prone per se, but he has had fair few injuries last season, and he only played 17 games last season, and he is a little bit risky to draft in my eyes. If Shane Larkin in your draft drops as low as 20 or 25th pick, it is probably worth to draft him. Because without injuries, of course, he can generate great numbers, but really, I mean, it's your personal choice. And personally, I wouldn't risk it to lose him for too many games than I want. Team Grey chose Chris Jones. Team Grey picked Chris Jones. And Chris Jones might have even close to 15 PIR average this season. Hence, it is worth it to be drafted even at the end of the second round, around the 15th pick. So great pickup by Team Grey if they were able to draft it at 19th. Team Brown chose Jan Vesely. And that's the similar situation to Willy Hernan Gomez. Because with Hernan Gomez around, I would project even lower numbers for Vesely than last season. there is much more better options for center position. Still at this point in the draft, at 20th pick, there is plenty of center position available. So yeah, and Wesley, I don't think he will have even 11 PAR at the end of the season, which is really low for 20th pick. Let's continue to the other teams. And Team Yellow chose Kemba Walker. The thing with Kemba Walker is that he is actually injury prone, and first time in European basketball and in a stacked lineup of guards in the same team. So very risky pick. Personally, I would only draft him at the second half of the whole draft, somewhere around 60th pick, 55th earliest. Yes, there is a potential that he could do good in Euroleague, but he will not have so many minutes because of the roster we have in Monaco. So I'm out from Kemba Walker. As 22nd, Team Green chose Juancho Hernan Gomez. And Juancho is a good pick at this point, as it definitely has a high PAR potential. Also, Pau has a stacked lineup as well, but they should find him space. If he comes from NBA, and he should have good stats. He might have somewhere between 14 and 15 PAR, so definitely we'll draft him at 22nd. I would draft him even earlier, at around 18th pick, if there is no better options available. Team Blue chose Frank Kaminsky as their third pick, and Kaminsky should have above 13 PAR next season, but Partizan might sign one more center later in the season, or center power forward, in someone in the front line in between those positions. So it's good to have that in mind. But yeah, I project at least 13 PR for Kaminsky next season. Team Red chose Gabriel Deck. Lately, Gabriel Deck has also become injury-prone-ish player, and at the moment already with a light thigh injury. So hence I would personally draft Gabriel Deck lower, somewhere around 45th pick maybe. Team Red chose Shabazz Napier, and I'm out of Napier. I would only towards the end of the draft because he's injury prone, and I mean it's your fourth pick and you're risking a lot. You could take a player that would bring you more stats overall. Yes, Shabazz has good potential to score, but the potential for a potential injury outweighs it in my eyes. Team Blue chose another injury-prone player, and from the last season, it seemed that Lucic is declining, mostly because of the injuries. Personally, I wouldn't draft him at all for this reason, because of him being injury-prone, and he didn't produce good stats last season and missed a lot of games for the injuries. He's 34 already, will be this season, so yeah, I would choose another player over him. I don't think he will have more than 7 PR average next season anyways. Team Green chose Shawan Shields, and Shawan Shields, he is also an injury-prone player. Funnily enough, all these guys choose injury-prone players at this point in the draft, at least. But of course, if you're lucky with, he might produce all very big numbers, above 20 PR. I'm not talking average in this case, but I'm talking in some games. But he has the potential. He's a very good player, obviously. It's just unfortunate that he had the injuries in the past season or two, and didn't play so many games, or actually very little games. So overall, I would project, since you would not have him a lot, I wouldn't draft him personally. Team Yellow chose Tornike Shengelia, and last season wasn't amazing, but who knows, the new coach, Luca Banchi, might rely on Shengelia way more than Sergio Scariolo did, and then Shengelia might have great numbers. But for now, I would consider him for around 12 PAR value to draft, which puts him more towards around 50th pick, like 51st pick. I think it's still a bit too early to draft him at this point. Team Brown chose Luca Vildoza. With the roster that Pau has, Vildoza shouldn't have more than 13 PAR, probably somewhere between 12 and 13. Team Grey chose Nigel Hayes Davis, And I project same stats as last season, hence he should have around 13 PAR. It's a good pickup at this point. Team Pink chose Bonzi Colson, and Bonzi Colson now has more competition with the new signings. Hence, I would project same number because he's of course improving. So around 13 PR with potential to have higher. So good pickup at this point for sure. I picked Elijah Bryant, and my reason for that was that with Larkin and Clyburn having risk, both of them having risk for injuries, Elijah is a great pickup as he will have his minutes regardless, even if everyone is healthy. But in case of one of those guys that will miss some games, Brian will generate those lovely fantasy points for you. So really, he is a very good player, and if that happens, then you're up for big numbers with him. As a 31st pick, I picked Sterling Brown from Alba. He really seems to be the main man for Alba this season. Hence, he should have the ball a lot and give you 15 or more PRR per game this season. So I would consider drafting him even at the end of the second round or the third round. So I love it that I got him at the 33rd pick. But yeah, I would consider drafting him in top 20, top even 16, as he might really be the guy that gives you points. Team Pink chose Brandon Davis as a 34th pick, and I project a bounce back season for Davis with 14th PAR. It's a really nice pick. Thomas Walkup goes to Team Grey, and with Slukas out, I don't see as much increase in PR as everyone might think. Now that we have Bresdakis, he will also want the ball. And yes, Walkup will have his numbers with around 12 PAR. But therefore, I might as well draft Walkup a little bit later, somewhere around 40th pick. But yeah, it's okay pick at this point. Team Brown chose Scotty Wilbekin. Wilbekin is injury prone-ish, shoots a lot, but since not all shots are made, that reduces his PAR. Hence, I wouldn't expect more than 11 PAR on average. Only thing that helps him is that there's not so much competition in the guard section, basically. Team Yellow chose Gershon Yabusele from Real Madrid, and it's a good pickup. I would draft him also actually, 37 or 39. So good pick, especially for the beginning of the season, due to a light injury that Gabriel Deck has. Overall, I expect a bit higher numbers than last season, so somewhere around 12.5 PAR. Team Green chose Thomas Satoransky, and seems like a safe bet to pick Sato here, as he should generate a forecasted of 12.5 PAR or higher this season. Team Blue chose Naz Mitrulong, and Naz might have 10 PAR, hence he might not even make it to some other drafts, as there are a bunch of better players from the stats perspective. So he is drafted way too early here. I would consider draft him 80th pick or later. Team Red chose Serge Ibaka, and not to be honest, I'm not sure what to expect from Ibaka, as he can be as low as 10 PAR or as high as 15. So, I mean, it's still a bit hard to predict how energetic he will be, or will it be more rusty after not playing much, and who knows if the age doesn't give him injuries. Hopefully not, but you never know. So it's a bit risky. So if you can get him at 40th pick, why not take him, but might as well take him later. Team Red chose Nicola Melli as 41st pick. And with the forwards, centers lineup in Milano stacked, Melli should have lower numbers than the previous season. I would expect below 11 PAR. Team Blue chose Edgaras Ulanovas from Žalgiris, and Ulanovas is a safe pick if you want a forward of 11.5 PAR. So yeah, a little bit too early in my eyes, but it's good enough. Team Green chose Mateusz Ponitka that went to Partizan this year. Ponitka has a shoulder healing after an surgery, so might miss a game or two in the beginning of the season, but then should start playing after soon after the season starts. So if not from the beginning, actually, I don't know the exact number of games that he will miss, if any. But Mr. Green didn't have that information when drafting, as he said afterwards. But as he imagined that Ponitka is healthy, but Ponitka might have, I believe, from 10 to 11 PRR eventually. But that only makes it considerable to draft somewhere at the end, actually, not at 45th pick. Team Yellow chose Josh Nebo, and Nebo, with more experience every season, should have a bit higher numbers with around 12 PR this season, or a bit more, but not too far from the last season digits. Team Brown chose Rokas Gedraitis. Gedraitis seems to be the go-to guy of Duško Ivanovic, where we were together in Baskonia in the past. Hence, now in Zvezda, he will get a lot of minutes. He seems to be getting a lot of minutes already in the preparation games. I would draft him even higher, actually, around 30th pick, because he will be giving you stats. I project for him to have more than 13 PIR. Team Green chose Mustafa Fall, and the stats will probably go down for Mustafa to somewhere below 11 PIR due to Milutinov taking the main center role. So I would draft him around 75th pick or later. Team Pick chose Ante Žižić, and we saw what Žižić can do in Maccabi and at the end of the last season in Efes. Hence, with Thompson now in the lineup, he shall rise in numbers and closer to 15 PAR I project for Žižić. And it's definitely a good pickup. I would draft him in the top 20, actually. I chose PJ Dozier. PJ is a direct replacement to Exum in the team, even having similar of some of the set plays for him. So he has NBA athleticism and skill, and we can project for him to have 14.5 PAR. Then I chose Mike Kotzer, as I really wanted to have someone in the second center position. Kotzer, in his second season, is expected to have higher numbers. Hence, it was best available second center for me at the time of the pickup. So I expect 14 PAR average from him. And Team Pink chose Luke Sigma. Sigma is not getting younger, and the stats were not amazing last season already. So now with the competition from Alec Peters, I project only around 10 PAR for Sigma, and I would only draft him at the bottom picks of the draft, somewhere at the end, at around 99, just so he was drafted way too early here. Team Grey chose Nando De Cola. With Paris, Lee, and Frank Jackson coming in, and De Cola being 36 years old, I would expect a big drop in stats. Hence, I wouldn't pick him earlier than 85th pick. I wouldn't risk. I don't think there is much chance for him to generate high numbers of stats. Team Brown chose Marko Guduric, and I would pick Guduric earlier with a projected PIR of 12.5. I really like Guduric. With that PIR, he should be drafted somewhere around 38th, 40th pick, in my eyes. Team Yellow chose Santa Hall, and with Donatas Motiejūnas, Demo aging, I only expect for Hall to go up in numbers. He's getting better every season. So, yeah, what do you guys think about him getting 14 PAR average this year? Semi Ojele last season showed that he is an injury-prone-ish player. As you guys can see, I'm really out of the injury-prone-ish players. I don't want to risk it not to able to play them in the fantasy league throughout the season. So I would draft him from 70 pick and up, like later, because he has potential definitely to have good stats. Team Blue chose Jabari Parker, another injury-prone player, another ex-NBA player. So I don't see higher PAR average than 9 PAR. I would recommend to actually pass Jabari Parker, not to draft him at all. If it's a 8-player draft, if you're drafting more players than 8, then it changes the picture. But I don't think he will have even 9 PAR. So yeah, I wouldn't pick him. Maybe at the very end of the draft if you really want him, but I mean, I think it's a waste of a draft pick at this point. Team Red chose Nicolas Laprovitola. and Lapro should have even better numbers than the last season. I expect 13 PAR, and yeah, it's amazing pickup at 56 pick. I would draft him around 30, 40 pick. Team Red chose another Barcelona guy, which is Nikola Kalinic. And Kalinic might go to around 11 PAR average this season. So it's a good place to draft him at this point, actually. Yeah, somewhere around 55th pick is good. Team Blue chose Tyreek Jones. We shouldn't expect same numbers as in Euro Cup for Tyreek Jones that he had last season. I would draft him later for about 11 or less PAR, so which puts him at 83rd draft pick. Team Green chose Carson Edwards, and I would draft Carson Edwards as 24th, 30th pick, as Carson seems to be the main scorer for Bayern this preseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carson has 14 PAR. I would consider to draft him in around 24th pick. Marcus Howard, really great pick here by Team Yellow, as he can definitely have some crazy nights. And even if Marcus Howard doesn't play some nights, I think overall, since fantasy allows you to move in between days, day 1 and day 2. So if it happens that he plays first night and he doesn't play so well, you might as well bench him. But in those nights that he can have 25 and above a PAR, then you will be really happy to have him. Tim Brown chose Khalifa Diop. He's a still very young talent, hence going up to Euroleague from Eurocup will not mean that he will have high stats by default. I wouldn't draft him, as he will probably have less than 9 PAR. It's a harsh league, the Euroleague is. Ignas Brazdeikis in Olympiacos now. So actually drafted 1 day before the rumors appeared and 2 days before it actually became official that Olympiacos buys him out. In Žalgiris, I would have forecasted 11 PAR for him average. But now it's not clear how much time he will get in Bartzoka's rotations. He will probably be starting a shooting guard, but due to his average or below average defense, he might not get as much playing time as we expect. Therefore, I would go somewhere between 10 and 11 PAR for him and draft him between 62 and 70th pick. Team pick chose Chimo Moneke, and Chimo Moneke has played in the Spanish League 2 seasons ago. He has NBA athleticism, which in my forecast can be a breakout EuroLeague season for him, with as high as 12 PIR or greater. So it's definitely a great steal at 63rd pick by Mr. Pink. I would recommend to draft him maybe even 45th pick or later if you can. I chose Cody Miller-McIntyre because I believe he will be the main point guard in Baskonia. And he's a great player. But actually, since others might not pick him as early, I might have picked him a bit too early, as it's also, good to know that others might not want to risk him. So I picked him at 64th pick, but you might as well wait a little bit lower if he drops to 75th and then pick him. I think then he's definitely a good pickup. But still, actually, I forecast him that he will have more than 13 PR. Then I picked Eli Okobo. Yes, the lineup is stacked, but because Kemba, he's only still preparing for the season. As we talked, he's injury prone, so he might be out. Jordan Lloyd still has injury for a month or two. Therefore, Okobo will be the point guard. He's more point guard than shooting guard. So when Kemba and James or Lloyd cannot play, he will collect those minutes. And I picked him at 65th pick, and I recommend you do the same, as he might have 13 PR. Team Pink chose Deshaun Pierre as 66th pick. And Nate Sestina will definitely take minutes from Pierre actually this season. Hence, I would aim for 11 from between 11 and 12 PAR. So good pick at this point of the draft actually. I would also recommend to pick him at 50 or later. Team Grey chose Kevin Pangos, injury prone player, and it seems that Pangos has its best years in the past, unfortunately, as he was struggling last season. Hence, I would not recommend to draft him at all. Because, I would project that he will have 8 PAR average. Team Brown chose Alpha Diallo, and Diallo will get his minutes and stats. Hence, he might even go for 12 PAR this season in average. So, yeah, worth to draft him even earlier. But if it drops to this point, I'll definitely pick him. Team Yellow chose John Brown, and that's probably was the most shocking pick in the whole draft that I saw. Because Brown is an amazing defensive player, but he's not an amazing pick for fantasy draft. He's not a stats generator for PIR per se, so he has small numbers and probably will have 6.5 as last season, below 7 PR for sure with all the tough competition that Monaco has in the roster. And Team Green chose Paris Lee. Paris Lee is also a defensive player, but he can score as we know. So sweet pick for a 70th pick. He should have at least 11 PIR. Jalen Smith. Smith is known to be unstable in his performance through the season, but since point guard position Virtus is slim, so there is no real competition, he will get his minutes and might produce numbers of between 11 and 12 PIR. So he could be drafted a bit earlier actually. Mario Hazonia is a great player. The only issue is the stacked roster in Real Madrid and tough competition for minutes. But I foresee him having 10.5 PAR easily, hence would draft him somewhere around 80th pick, maybe a little bit later when he was drafted here. Then Jordan Lloyd goes to Team Red, and Jordan Lloyd starts off the season by recovering from an injury, so it's definitely risky to pick him with the guard situation in Monaco, but he should be back at some point in October, and if he is healthy, we know what numbers he can put. So personally would consider picking him at between 40 and 50th pick, but you all take the risk because if he has an injury already, yeah, you need to be careful. Roland Schmitz as a 74th pick, and he should go for 11 PR this season. He will get a lot of playing time in Žalgiris, and as long as he can score, he will get those points. Team Green chose Luis Olinda, and people believe that this might be the season when Olinda has a breakthrough. I would draft him before 80th pick, somewhere around 48, as I see him easily having 12 PAR average this year. Nunnally goes to Team Yellow as 76 pick. Nunnally is more of a shooter than stats collector. And with him becoming older, we shouldn't expect for the stats to rise. Hence, we can only hope for 9.5 PR in season, which in my eyes doesn't give him a spot on a draft at all, so I would skip him. Team Brown chose Nemanja Nedovic. It's an injury prone or between injury prone and injury prone-ish player. Therefore, personally, that is the reason I wouldn't risk him. He had 11.13 PR last season, but the roster is much more stacked this season, so I would be surprised if Nedovic reaches 10 PAR average. I would guess it will be more like between 8 and 9 PAR, and you don't want players of that average in your roster. Timofeu Vukobaro, he's a 3&D guy, but in Aswell he should have a much bigger role. Forecasted PAR somewhere between 12 and 13 PAR. I would consider picking him as 40th, anywhere after 50th pick. I will definitely pick him earlier. Nick Kalitas, and Fenerbahce didn't want Kalatas until Raul Neto got a season-ending injury, so hence I'm out from drafting Kalatas. Because if the team doesn't want the player, what guarantees he have to continue playing throughout the season? But you might get some return if you gamble in drafting him, as point guard position in Fenerbahce is not too wide. I picked Nikos Rokavopoulos, and Baskonia believes in Nikos as an NBA prospect so much that they even let go of their captain Rokas Giedraitis, because Nikos should take the role of Giedraitis in the roster. But of course, he is still a young player, so he will have a hard competition at the highest level in Euroleague. Maybe I'm being optimistic by projecting more than 12 PAR, but we all have to take chances, right? Then I went with Iago dos Santos. Iago had an amazing season in Eurocup last season and fantastic World Cup. As for Luka Mitrovic, for Team Pink, so seems that Duško is trusting Mitrovic a lot. Hence, I would even consider drafting Mitrovic around 70th pick, a bit earlier. Team Gray chose Gabriel Lundberg, and Lundberg was rumored to leave the club, but a coach change happened, and he was seen at the media day taking pictures with the full roster. So there's still hope that he will play. But even if he will, what numbers will he generate then? I wouldn't risk drafting Lundberg. There are many more safer, better options to draft still at this point than Lundberg. Team Brown chose Antonius Cleveland for 84th pick, and Cleveland has crazy athleticism, but he seems to be more defensive-minded player. If he's a defensive player, that usually doesn't translate to high PAR. So I would draft him even lower, not as high as here, maybe somewhere towards the end of the draft, because he might still have 10 PAR. Team Yellow chose Vincent Poirier. Even if Tavares actually is playing and is healthy, Poirier gets his 10 PAR. Mauda Law was chosen by Team Green as 86 pick, and I would draft Mauda Law higher, as he should be the main point guard in Milan, as we see as of now. So I would draft him around 60th pick. Matt Costello, I don't expect higher numbers from Costello this season, hence it is good to draft him 85th. Yeah, it's about time to draft him as a third center, why not? Team Red chose Jordan Mickey, and great pick, as Mickey should have a better season with around 11 PIR. I would draft him 70th pick or later, so 88 for sure, take him. Another player for Team Red is Dinos Mitoglu. I consider Kostas Mitoglu injury prone-ish. He even missed World Cup due to a minor injury, unfortunately, so otherwise he has the capacity to generate numbers if he's healthy. So he might be considerable to draft at almost 90th pick or later, but I wouldn't draft him too earlier than that because of the injury prone-ish status. Team Blue chose Mike Scott. It's an ex-NBA player with good stats in French league that he had last season after coming from NBA. He could be worth to risk it and draft him even 60th pick or a bit later, because he might have good numbers in Aswell team. Frank Jackson was drafted by Team Green as 91st pick, and he might be one of the main scorers for Aswell this season. So I would draft him around 50th pick or later. If you want to try and pick someone better and hopefully it falls down, do it. But yeah, I would draft in between 50th and 60th pick. Jiran Grant goes to Team Yellow as 92nd, and he's more of a defensive player, Jiran. He didn't have so good season 2 seasons ago in Milano, which was his first European season, but then in Turk Telekom, he definitely had a great one. But even with the great stats in Eurocup last season, I don't expect crazy stats in Euroleague. And in this stacked power lineup, at this point of the draft, it's okay to draft him, as I expect between 10 and 11 PIR from him. Team Brown chose Yusuf Afal, and with Laverne being injury prone, I would expect Yusufa Fall to have another good stats season for Yusufa with 12.5 PIR or above. So I would draft him at 40th pick even, 40th, 50th. Team Grey chose Tadas Sidekerskis, and Sidekerskis might lose stats due to amazing performance of Chima Moneke. Hence, below 10 PIR would be projected for Sidekerskis, and later than 90th pick. Team Pink chose Johannes Tiemann. He should step up this season even more and might have even more than 12 PIR. I would consider drafting him around 60th pick or later, as others shouldn't pick him earlier anyways, but at that point it's a good pick because he will have good numbers this season. I chose Alec Peters, and I was not expecting to get him at 96 because maybe it was still not so many friendly games played, and my friends, we didn't know so much about him. But obviously, if you guys follow, you know that he played in Baskonia 2 seasons ago and he had good numbers. So the problem why he didn't do good last season was that obviously Sasha Vezenkov was just doing superb. So Peters didn't get any minutes. But now with Vezenkov out, he will have a way better season. So I think now people get to realize that, and they might draft him earlier. So I wouldn't risk too much, but I would draft him at 60th pick, maybe 55th pick. Then I drafted Marko Simonovic as my third center. I think it's worth take Simonovic at the end of a draft, as I did, as your bench center to hold and see if he starts getting those stats that he has the potential to. He was in NBA after all. Team Pink chose Matt Thomas, and I'm out from Matt Thomas because he's a shooter and he will not get you the fantasy points you desire. Hence, I would skip him. Team Grey chose Devin Booker, and it's hard to know how the other guy in Bayern, Serge Ibaka, how it will affect Booker's stats. But I would draft Booker around 70th pick already, so at this point definitely draft him, as he should have 11 PAR at least. Jovic is a good player, but not good enough fantasy points wise for us to draft him, therefore I'm out from drafting Jovic. Papapetru should have a better season back in Panathinaikos compared to the one that he had in Partizan last season. We can expect around 10 PAR, hence it is okay to draft him at the end of a draft, as Mr. Yellow did here. Alex Poitras, too many frontline players in Milan, hence I would skip Poitras with 9 PIR forecast. Not sure if Bolmara will generate great stats, but one might as well draft him at the end of a draft for the bench and keep him there to see if he will become the PIR monster that nobody expects. And Mr. Red finishes the draft by picking Mattia Spagnola. Really unexpected pick. I would draft someone else than Mattia, as he is a very young talent. Yes, he's very talented, but he shouldn't have more than 6 PR in his rookie Euroleague season. So let's go through the teams once again. Now we are all complete. Team Orange, Team Pink, Team Grey, Team Brown, and Team Yellow, Mr. Green, Mr. Blue, Mr. Red. Since I was mentioning that some of the players shouldn't have been drafted even, here are some good alternatives of players that were not drafted in our draft, but in my opinion we should have. Rodrigo Bobois, a very smart player that might as well have 11 PR season. He's really smart and has a lot of steals and gets PR going. We saw last season that Baron can bring you fantasy points, a considerable pick, anywhere 80th pick or later. Alexa Vramovic, he didn't had good stats last season, but with not having a real point guard or any other real point guard in Partizan, Alexa, he will definitely step up, as we saw in the World Cup. So he should definitely have more than 10 PAR this season and some good games incoming. Therefore, he is worthy to draft at 90th pick or later. Justin Bean from Alba Berlin. He is a very hard-working player and has the potential to have as high as 11 PAR. Therefore, I would consider him to draft some between 75th and 100th pick. With Vesenkov and Slukas out, Kostas Papanikolaou should have higher role and have at least 10.5 PAR this season. Would consider to draft him 80th pick or later. Pongo is still only 23 years old, hence I would recommend to draft him as a sleeper somewhere at the end of a draft, as he might generate those fantasy points for you. Georgios Papagiannis. Papagiannis should still collect at least 11 PAR even if he's in Fener and will have the competition with Motley. So I would consider him at the end of a draft, as he is a very good player and he will get his rebounds, his points. It will not take him much minutes to get to 10, 11 PAR or more. Ismail Kamagate, a young player with a very high potential in Milan. I would risk him to have as a third center, depending on what other players are available after 70th pick, depending when you choose to draft your third center. I would really recommend to consider, as who knows, he might have a good season. Roman Sorkin. Sorkin could have above 10 PAR, as he is improving every season, and Oded Katash seems to trust him and give him minutes. So I would definitely consider drafting him after a 90th pick or later, as he should have more than 10 PR this upcoming season. Also guys, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comment section below which player do you think drafted the best team. All this for a chance to win an epic NFT card of Daniel Hackett from Virtus Bologna that you can use to play Ultimate Champions Euroleague Fantasy, as I will pick one lucky winner on October 5th, the day that Euroleague season starts. If you haven't signed up yet for the Ultimate Champions Euroleague Fantasy platform, sign up through the link in the description below. That's all, guys. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.